Hello everybody and welcome to the season review log for Steven Universe. My goodness, I'll try not to rush this time around. So that means I probably have to cut this into multiple pieces. But let's get on with the show. As it has been made acutely aware, I absolutely love the show. Like, honestly, it is currently my favorite show. And that's saying a lot. Like, that is a lot. I know some people would prefer or have their own preferences, but I just absolutely adore the show for a few specific reasons, and one exactly specific reason which will come later, and that is the titular character and his point of view. But we'll talk about that later. First off, let's get on with the actual technical details, and we shall begin with graphical design of the show, as that is quite something to say. So first off, the animation quality is certainly not bad per se. It's not bad. It's strange. It has a very cartoony look, and they do use it to its fullest advantage. In that they actually they do use the cartoonish look that an animation style they have to over accentuate some emotions and reactions that the characters have, and that is certainly fine. It just looks really strange sometimes, and for me personally it sometimes falls into the uncanny valley. That's a bit unfortunate, but it still is fine enough, and when it is funny and not disturbing, it actually is really funny. Like, it, they know how to take advantage of the style, and I like that. So the animation is not bad, and it isn't sloppy or anything. So take that as you wish. It's a peculiar animation style, and it could be better, but it's fine enough, I suppose. And it's not bad, so yeah. That's a really offhanded compliment, but whatever. So, and then the actual graphical design of the show, I found to be surprisingly solid. Like, the every background is actually very detailed, and they do have a lot of small details here and there that actually make their world seem a lot more alive. And since we do visit most of the locations more than once, that means that those places need to have those details, and those always keep consistent, well, excluding the occasions when they are altered specifically. So there's some consistency in the backgrounds while they are also being very distinctive. And surprisingly enough, the mystical nature of the show, they can actually portray a wide array of background and locations, and that is like really interesting. Like, if you compare the beach city to the kindergarten, there's like a really huge tonal shift, and they do know how to take full advantage of that. One of the most impressive things about the show is actually its graphic design in the style of um, overlaying some colors to the show, and they know how to take full advantage of that by slightly altering the picture so that it's maybe lot more a darker shade of blue or a greeny or greenish sickish color in the finale specifically, where it gave kind of a very off-putting feeling. Like, it felt a bit weird and a bit sick, which was really good for the specific scene. Now, we haven't seen anything like, let's say, red, bright colors of red. We have seen pink, which is actually kind of funny considering few things, and that is also kind of Steven's um, color, kind of, not really, but in a way, yes, because of his power. But so it's interesting that we haven't seen red all that much, although we have Garnet, but that's a different case. But the show isn't really that bent on aggression all that much, at least yet. So it's understandable. While we have seen actually most other shades of the color spectrum, so like we have seen a lot of blues and some yellows as well used, actually some whites as well, which is rather interesting. So on the overall, the color design is very superb. I just wish I wasn't colorblind or could really appreciate it more. But still, humans are peculiar creatures, as colors do affect them even if they don't recognize them. So take that as you wish. The color design is definitely superb. And then we'll talk about animation, character design. And this is where the show at the same time shines and looks really goofy. Mostly in the way that every character is very distinctive. Maybe a bit too distinctive. They are very, very there are various different character designs in the show, and they look so different. It's hard to imagine them being in the same universe even. Like, they are all supposed to portray humanoids, but if you compare something, let's say Onion to Jasper, those both are supposed to be humanoids, but they are so different, it's impossible to believe. Or something like Lars to freaking Steven, like, they do feel like they're in the same show thanks to their animation style, but they feel so different because of how different they look. I don't mind it, and they can actually, like, because they do know, again, the show is masterfully designed, so they know how to take advantage of it. When they design the characters, they do know how to accentuate those parts which are supposed to be, like, kind of stereotypical for those characters, and they know how to use their character designs to, well, give us an overall clue about the character's personality, to create a kind of a stereotype with the character design, while at the same time keeping them interesting and kind of original even. It's interesting, and they still do know how to keep them in the same universe in a way, and even characters in the same family do portray similar distinctive traits, such as, I don't think if we've learned their family, whatever, the family that owns the Fry business, and all of their children have yellow hair and with those kind of dreadlock style hair. So they do share similar features, such as even Steven and Greg resemble each other, just physically speaking. So, well, actually, kind of also just in general with their characterization. So yeah, it's a peculiar thing how they can at the same time have a very strange look on them, while at the same time it feels very fitting. Most of these are really a question of getting used to them, so it's not bad, but it's rather off-putting at first. So take that as you wish. Then let's talk about story overall, which I found to be rather interesting. Without going into the biggest reason I love the show, let's just say the show has a very episodic format, and while the stories are very self-contained, and they do still have some continuity inside of them, and they actually show character progression, and they don't really, like, outwardly call attention to them, which is interesting to say the least, that they have such good character progression, and it feels natural because they don't actually, like, they don't try to call attention to the fact that, yeah, our characters are developing. It's really cool in that manner. Like, I can feel like every character is developing, and we have kind of seen them grow together, which is really quite something. Like, specifically some relationships such as, well, oh, I can just say every relationship with Steven has developed over the course of the show. Some less than others, such as I'm trying really blanking on this. Onion and Steven, although that has developed as well, but yeah, it has developed a little because there hasn't been all that many episodes focused on that, because no one wants to deal with that little devil. But yeah. But if we take an example for, like, Connie and Steven, that's a very obvious case of character progression. And even, like, Steven's relationship with all of the crystal gems, it has developed. A bit more subtly, yes, but it has developed. And I do like it because it shows that there's like actual time that has passed. So yeah, in that manner, it's an interesting way to tell the story, as it might feel that the episodes are not connected to each other all that much, besides reoccurring characters. However, every one of them is, every episode is shown from Steven's perspective, and in that manner, it also shows us how Steven actually has developed as a character, mostly by where the story is focused, what they are talking about, where is the focus of the episode, because in that manner we see what Steven is developing to think about. Like in the later episodes, Steven has developed a lot more intrigue to intercharacteral interaction, which is really quite interesting, as he is developing more into a more of a leader character, such as his mother was before him. So, and now he has grown more attuned to listen to the character or other people and their worries, and trying to sympathize a lot with them, which wasn't that prevalent in the first episode. It wasn't completely non-existent there, but it wasn't the focus, whereas in these past 6, 7, 8 episodes it has been the focus. So yeah. And then there's of course the recurring story, which is mostly the backstory of what gems are, why are the crystal gems here, and there's a lot of intrigue about Steven's mother as well. Not that, like, we do know things about her, but her mysteriousness is certainly an interesting point that we are only getting little glimpses of. And again, it's from Steven's perspective, so yeah. Then I suppose, actually, before I go into talking about every character specifically, I'm gonna mention the reason why I love the show, because it's kind of important. And as I kind of mentioned, it is indeed the fact that Steven is the titular character, and the show knows that, and it plays completely into that. The whole story of this show is centered, every episode revolves around Steven and his point of view. I don't think we've seen anything that Steven hasn't seen, so it's really cool. Every episode knows how to keep Steven in the story without pushing him into those stories and making him feel unnatural. Such as the episode of with the haunted house, I can't exactly remember the name. Steven, that's a place where Steven could have felt like an additional burden that was just placed there for the viewer proxy. However, due to the characterization of Steven, it actually felt natural for him to be there and push the story forward. So yeah, and since they, as I mentioned previously, since every episode is kind of, it shows from Steven's perspective, and that develops over time, we can see how Steven is developing and changing over time. We can see how his, well, perspective is changing, and how he's choosing to focus on different things. So yeah, that it's really interesting how much, like, it doesn't exactly feel like we are seeing, like, from this Steven's perspective, because he's such an amazing, like, he's a very good observer. In the, like, he's a silent observer, but he isn't, it doesn't feel unnatural for him to be like that. He is, after all, still a little observant little child, so it feels natural for him to be the silent observer. Although he isn't silent all the time, and he isn't exactly the most silent guy, I still feel like he really does serve that purpose for the viewer proxy quite well. While at the same time he does reveal his own character there, and he does put his own words in when there is the situation calls for it. So he is truly a remarkable character. So yeah, I do really like the show's focus around Steven, and how much they get out of Steven, and how much they really just revolve around Steven, because everything has to do with Steven.